We are now talking to 24/7 Sports, CBS Sports, college football analyst, Carl Reed. Carl, what's up, man?
I'm good, guys. How you guys doing, man?
Man, as you saw, I'm eating my candy Yorks. They're delicious, and just enjoying life. How was your Christmas? You and your family?
Christmas was really good, man. My kids got a lot of the stuff they wanted. They better be satisfied with it. I can tell you that. I think Santa Claus was really good to them this year, man. I hope everything went well for you guys.
Was Santa good for you?
Santa's never good for daddy. You know what I mean? Santa's never good for daddy. He's only good for the kids. You know how
Well, yeah, that's why you need to ask Mrs. Claus to give you a nice little present besides Santa Claus. You know,
Mrs. Claus is a hard bargain, man. Sometimes you can get a lump of coal in there, this big, man.
Well, you better hope it's candy. I could send you some candy Yorks if you want.
Hey, I'm down with it. Send it, man. We'll do a Instagram story commercial for those guys.
Let's do it, man. Let's do it. Me and you will be the new spokesman for Candy York Candies. There you go.
Let's do it.
Maybe
send the contracts over.
There you go. You pay us. I mean, I think us doing a crazy skit, from one side to another. Where are you at, by the way? Where are you located?
I'm in St. Louis, Missouri.
Oh, yes. I actually like St. Louis. It's great food, great barbecue food over there. Love it.
Great barbecue. The best Chinese food in the country. We have better Chinese food here than China does.
Nice. I love it. Listen, by the way, we are talking to 24/7 Sports and CBS Sports college football analyst Carl Reed. Before we get into football conversation, because I know you have a lot to say about these two playoff games, two really big games coming up, and from Georgia and Ohio State, and then obviously Michigan and TCU, which is a surprise, I believe, all season long, and as well as they should be where they are today. Were you surprised all season long the way everything fell the way it did?
Well, yeah, definitely. Alabama really struggled this year. And I know at the beginning of the season, a lot of people had them number one. Definitely most people had them in the top two. And to lose the way they did to Tennessee, I think was probably the biggest loss, and they never seemed to really recover. Then the loss to LSU down the stretch was a rough deal. So I don't think anybody was really expecting that. Clemson was in a great position, and then they blew a couple there at the end. TCU, the surprise of the season. And then I was most surprised that even though TCU ended up losing in the Big 12 championship, that they still got in. I thought that they were going to find a way to knock those guys out, because that's typically what happens in a situation like that. But then USC ended up losing to Utah, so that kept TCU in the thick of it. So it was a crazy season. You got a lot of parity, and the transfer portal does that. One of the things that the transfer portal has done is it's made some of those elite teams lose their depth. Guys like Alabama, Clemson, and Ohio State, they just normally have an assembly line of talent, and they can just replace player after player after player. Well, those players aren't sticking around anymore to sit on the bench and wait. Those players are leaving and going to other schools, where they can be starters at. So I think that we got to see a lot of that this year in the college football season. And so we have some great surprises, and we might have had some of the parity that people are looking for.
Mm-hmm. So my question is about the actual matchups themselves. Do you see it being like another one of those years where you could see the 4 seeds upsetting the ones? Because it actually happened a good amount in this college football playoff era. Or do you think teams like Georgia are just that good where you can see a team like Ohio State, even with the talent, beating them?
I think Georgia is the clear favorite. Georgia's the clear favorite in this playoff. Obviously coming off a national championship last year, but they've remained dominant on defense, and they have a quarterback that is not as great as some people would like, but he's not going to lose the game for them. And I think that Brock Bowers is the best player in college football at tight end. So you're going to have to really beat Georgia, and I think that they have the guys defensively, they can just guard people, and they can load up against the run with everybody else. I don't see anybody beating Georgia.
As everybody knows, we are talking to 24/7 Sports and CBS Sports college football analyst Carl Reed. We go through what Georgia has been over the last 2 years, and Ohio State. Obviously, Justin Fields, top draft pick. Obviously, Chicago moving up with the Giants and drafting him at number 11, and now a guy like Stroud, who everybody believes could be the number 1 pick this year. What is the differences between Stroud and Justin Fields and what you have seen over the last couple of years?
Well, number one, Stroud is a little bigger guy, a little stronger. I think he might be a step ahead as a pocket passer. Fields is more of a dynamic athlete, but I think that Ryan Day has done a good job at the quarterback position, tailoring the offense around what those guys do really well. It can be a lot of times we'll compare guys that played at the same school, but they don't have as much in common as people think that they do, from a skill standpoint and the way that they play position. I think that obviously CJ will be one of the top 2 quarterbacks. Bryce Young is also heavily going to be in that conversation as opposed to who goes number 1, and that'll go down the order of picks and draft preference and whatnot. But I do think that CJ Stroud is going to be in the position to have a really good NFL career.
So Caleb Williams obviously winning the Heisman, and also the 4 Heisman finalists. Stetson Bennett, like you mentioned before, kind of a surprise in that. Is there somebody that you thought would have been happening to get that instead, or do you think he deserved this 4th spot? And do you think Caleb Williams deserved to win it?
Well, I think down the stretch, a lot of the guys who were favorites, they lost, man, and it was tough. Blake Corum is a guy that if he doesn't get hurt at the end of the season is probably in that discussion with an opportunity to win it, but then injury takes him out later on in the year. His injury almost cost Michigan losing to Illinois, and that would have set another domino of haywire as that game came down to a couple of plays. So I think that the finalists, you could have made an argument for Stetson Bennett because Georgia has had the best team and he's the quarterback of the best team. But at the same time, he's not the best player on Georgia, so that makes it tough. I think that Caleb Williams did rise to the top of a Heisman group that is not as elite as some might have thought that it would have been.
We are talking to 24/7 Sports and CBS Sports college football analyst Carl Reed. You look at Michigan. Michigan's had a sensational year. Their defense was sensational. They had one of the best running backs in the country in Blake Corum. Obviously getting hurt at the end of the season. He's out for the rest of the season. I believe that could affect them moving forward if they had any chance of beating Georgia or Ohio State or any of these other teams. I think they're better than TCU. I think going into this game, they're definitely heavily favored to come out of that game, and we could see Georgia and Michigan again in the national championship. That quite possibly could happen. But losing a guy of that magnitude, a running back that dynamic, who I think he is definitely going to be a top draft pick in this year's class. Where do you see this Michigan team from last year's? Obviously, they had Hutchinson and the dynamic defense that they had. And now this year, a lot of people forget that as good as the defense was last year, they were ranked higher this year defensively.
I think the big thing for Michigan is their offensive line is so good that it doesn't matter who the running back is going to be. They replaced Corum pretty easily, and you saw what they did to Ohio State, the way they dismantled them. What they're doing right now offensively from a standpoint of the way they're running the ball, you can anybody who wants to education on running the ball should be watching Michigan in its clinic film. The things are they did lose some key guys on the defense, but some guys have stepped up. Georgia obviously overwhelmed them a year ago, but Georgia did lose 15 starters to the NFL last year, and they still got a bunch of great guys, but there are differences between these two teams from last year. So I don't think that Georgia's going to beat them 42-3 or whatever the score ended up being a year ago, but I do still give Georgia the edge, and I think that both Georgia and Michigan win their semifinal games, and you're going to be in for a really, really physical national championship game.
So it's interesting with the 4 teams that made it. They're 2 different types of coaching identities. We said Jim Harbaugh and Kirby Smart, very defensive oriented, running the ball. And then the other way around, Sonny Dykes, a spread offense type guy. He's done a nice job at TCU. And Ryan Day, a lot of people thought was going to be an NFL coach in the future before this year. There were a lot of people have criticized him. So do you see that? What coaching style do you think has an advantage in college football as a whole, even with more quarterback-centric league?
The rules to football never change. Run the ball, play great defense, and don't lose the game on special teams. And that's going to always give you the best chance to win championship level football. And history is going to continue to show you that the guys who can do those 3 things well are the guys that are going to consistently win national championships. Even when you have great quarterback performances, look at the elite defenses and running backs that those guys were paired with. And that always makes the difference in championship football.